Hey guys, it's Fanblade with CaseModContest.com. I'm going to go over some things on how to cut some metal straight, mainly because a lot of people are having a lot of trouble with the straight cuts. I like to go over how I do it. May not be the right way, but it sure does work. So today I'm going to use a back cover off of Cooler Master Storm I had laying around. I'm just going to cut a rectangle hole in it, in this area here, mainly so I don't have to make all the curve cuts here. But the goal is to show how I make my lines straight. I know a lot of people use a Dremel, jigsaw. I'm going to use an angle head grinder with a cutting wheel, mainly because these last like 400 times longer than the Dremel wheels do. And just get the cut straight. I see a lot of builds online, and I go through thousands of builds, that's for sure. I look at them because it's just what I do. But I see a lot of crooked cuts, and I think it doesn't matter if you have $10,000 worth of hardware and you've got a $600 case. When you cut a hole and it's either angled wrong, or it's got some waves in it from the jigsaw, or it's bent where a jigsaw catches, or you can see the Dremel lines, it really takes away from the quality of the build. So I'm going to show you today a quick, simple way to straighten those cuts up with a flap wheel grinder head. You can use anything. I know most of you guys got Dremels, but they do have little sanding wheels with them. Personally, I don't like the Dremels because it just flat takes too long, and I'm lazy and I'm always in a hurry. So I'm going to lay this out, just a simple rectangle panel. I've got it backed up underneath to help keep from bending the panel. I don't like to cut on the panels off the edges because it can always bend it. This is a pretty stiff panel, so it shouldn't be a big problem. Like I say, I'll just cut a nice simple rectangle in it. Some nice arcs in the corners. Probably use 1 inch. And show you how I straighten it and square it up. Basically all we're going to need is some way to mark it. I usually tape an outline, gives me a good guide point. Say we'll use the cutoff wheel to get going. And of course my fancy ruler from MNPC Tech. This thing is the best, awesomest, greatest, awesomest tool. Awesomeness that's surely a word now. But as you can see, it's laid out for everything, and I'll use that to make most of my straight lines. And then I'll show how we go back and true everything up. What I recommend is just a nice piece of flat metal. That's, you got to make sure that whatever you use to make your straight lines, it's thicker than the material you're cutting. That way when you hit up against it, you can feel the difference in the cut, and then that will straighten it all out, and just grind right up against this. So let me get this laid out, and we'll go from there. Alright, first thing we're going to do, we need to find the center line, so make sure our window's centered in the unit here. They're 16¼ inches, so I've made a mark at 8 inch, 8 1/8 inch on both ends. I'm going to use a soapstone, just mainly because I love them. I always have them in stock. So we'll just make a nice little straight line here. I've decided on going with an 8-inch window. That'll still give me enough room if we was to put a piece of glass in here that will still have a nice flat surface around this end here. Then I'll probably just come in a standard 1 inch. That'll get me past this. It doesn't matter on this end, but we're going to leave a 1 inch gap at both ends, just to make sure it looks good. So 8 inch. We'll go 4 inches on both sides. Mark. Mark. And we'll draw our line. Just so we have it. So I can show you guys. Normally I wouldn't do this, I just use a tape. Just go across there. And this way you can see what it's going to look like. know what? I think just to make things easier, I know this is 1.5 inches. We'll just go with 1.5 inches. I can put this right up against the edge, draw a line, line it up with this side, and another line. And we'll kind of hold it up, see what it looks like. And I have to tell you, I don't like it. Nice thing about soapstone, we can erase pretty easy here. I think I'm gonna bring this out to 1/2 inch. Mark a 1/2 inch line. Another mark. And I still know that here, I know I'm going to have enough room to either, if I want to bolt this or if I want to back tape it, silicone it or whatever I'm going to use to put it in. But plenty of room over here, and it still looks pretty centered with the feature. I think one of the main thing is whenever you're going to make a cut, make sure it looks good to the eye. Personally, I like to work with everything off of the eye. It just seems like it's the best way to do it. If it doesn't look good right off the bat, make some changes. Yeah, now let's find something to make a radius with. Since it's going to be a small window, we'll just make a small radius. And plus I had this sitting right here. And this is 1 inch. Be perfect. So what I'll do is just hit each intersecting line. Bring this around to where it looks like it's going to intersect good. And that's it. Give it another look. Now obviously, if I was going to do this for a build, I'd definitely bring this up and down to add some extra features to it. Probably have that engraved in that area or something. So next step we're going to do is I'm going to tape a line because I know those won't hold up probably. I'm going to drag my hand across them. I'm going to go real simple. I'm going to cover the line. That'll give me some room to straighten the cuts up afterwards. Another thing, guys, anybody that does any painting or build, I always recommend good tape. Never skimp on tape. Good tape's expensive, but boy, is it worth it. At 99 cents a roll tape, just junk, will not come off the roll. This stuff is probably $5 or $6 a roll. Alright, see here we got our basic layout. You can see our radius cuts. I'm just going to use these to eyeball my cut. Most of them I can't see anymore. Come back and redraw these. And the radiuses at this point don't really need to be that perfect because I'm going to come back with a sanding wheel or a drum type disc to true these up. Main thing right now is our straight cuts, and then I'll just cut into these, hit them real quick, knock them out. First thing we need to do is put our wheel on. I don't recommend using these without a guard, like you see in every video. But I took it off. I'm too lazy to put it back on. It's hard for me to see the cut lines when the guard's on there. But if you think these won't cut, just ask my upper thigh that has, I had 32 staples put in. Kind of a bloody mess. Did that actually out here in the garage with that grinder. It wasn't a pretty scar either. So if you're going to do it, make sure you do it somewhere nobody can see it. Alright, let me get this clamped up and we'll get back to cutting. Alright, we'll get ready for the cut here. I always remember when you're cutting with these sparks will stick to a lot of things. If you're in the garage, you've got a car nearby or something, don't be disillusioned that this will not ruin them glass in that car, because it will definitely, the sparks will melt right into the glass or anything laying around. Fortunately, my garage is a wreck and I don't keep anything out here nice, so it's where I do all my dirty work. So let's get after this cut here. Like say, it doesn't matter if it's going to be real straight. I'm going to try and make them as straight as possible. I'll probably deliberately cut one crooked just to make sure. So we'll get started here. Oh, hell. Here, let me plug this in first. You ever wonder why you hit the switch more than once when it's not plugged in? Alright, those are the straight cuts. Left them pretty short. This one here is probably too close. Actually, they all came out pretty straight. Nice thing about the big blade is it really tends to hold your line straight versus a Dremel. It will end up walking. Another thing I don't like is if you use a jigsaw and it catches this metal, it's going to bend this panel. And once metal's stretched, it's really hard to get back into place. So that's why I don't recommend them. I know a lot of people use them and have good luck with it. Alright, we're going to cut these corners out. I'm trying to get this panel out of the way. That's that. Yeah, there's no heat. And then you can see right here, when I did my angle cut, I got into this area here. This would be a good example of how to straighten that up. I see a lot of cuts like this online that really take away from the aesthetics of the panel. You know, the outside of the case, obviously, look very nice. If that was inside the case, you know, don't take a picture of it. Nobody will know, but you. So let me dress these corners up real quick. I'm just going to use the edge of the grinder just to cut around these edges here and true these up. Then we'll get back to straightening it up. Alright, I got two of them roughed in. I'm going to show you these two here real quick, how I handle it. So there's a lot of metal here. I'm just going to cut into the line and take it out. Alright, there's those roughed in real quick. Now we'll go back and straighten our lines up. Look here. You can see the line here where it hits the tape, not here. You know, and if that was smooth and straight, probably be okay. Maybe you wouldn't be able to tell, but when the glass is in it, light's coming through, you know, people will pick up on this. A lot of smart people out there really notice this kind of stuff. So that's, you know, the main goal is to make sure these are all straight and true. Not to mention square with the panel. So I'll go grab some clamps. We'll get this untaped and show you where we go from there. Okay, just to make this show up a little bit better, I hit it with some primer real quick. You know, with a darker background on it, you can definitely see, you know, these miscuts right here. A little crooked there. Of course, these look like crap. Really a big miss here. You can't tell it probably on here, but this actually comes up, comes down, and back down and in. Like I say, you know, if I trued that up, probably wouldn't look bad. But, you know, I think it's important these days that everything's perfect and square. You know, and when I'm going over case mod contests, you know, I think it's important. Attention to detail these days, about all you can do. Anybody can slap some parts on, anybody can buy a window, cut a hole, slap it together. But I think, you know, when people are looking, especially for your high-end contests like we'll be running next year, you know, stuff like this, you know, it has to be perfect. People are really going to notice it. Your backside, obviously, can't have crap like this. Obviously, the window wouldn't work. So it's real important these are straight, everything's true and positive, and it really looks good for the build. You know, unfortunately, on monthly contests, when we have users voting, and this goes for any site, a lot of times it turns into a personality contest. You know, I like this guy, I'm going to vote for his build. Whenever I'm on one, I go through the build, and I look for little things. You know, and it can be inside the case, or maybe the builder mentioned, you know, I wish I had room to run this wire, and I should have probably drilled a hole here or something. So a well thought out build, quality wise, I think's better than some of the high end builds you might see sometimes, where they dumped a bunch of money in it, but really doesn't have the attention to detail. I know when you guys look at build logs, you'll see a lot of that, what I'm talking about. Cuts like this these days are just not going to fly. So it's important to get everything straightened up. I'm going to give you a quick thing what I'll do here. Now, I'm going to use this as a grinding guide. I'll measure over, clamp this in place in several spots to get rid of this spring. And then what I'll do is I'll take my flapper wheel, where the heck it went, here we go. And obviously it's dull and curved. If this was something really important, I'd use a straight one. I just don't have any new ones here. It's just a 36 grit. In fact, I'm going to see if I can find a 120. I got some 120s over about the same shape. And when we grind, as much as possible, I want this grinding up against this metal. Otherwise, it's going to want to push this down and bend it. Next thing you know, when you put a high gloss paint on this is all going to be warped down. You're going to be like, oh boy. Now what am I going to do? Obviously we don't want any problems like that found out after it's painted. Actually this one has a little dent in it somewhere here, and you know, I'll just hammer and dolly that back out. I actually got this case from a member that had dropped it on its nose, oh gosh, I don't know, a long time ago, and I got it for shipping. The rest of the case, I don't know if you guys have been watching my CNC lathe build, but the rest of the case has all been restructured and re-welded, and it's actually welded to my CNC lathe now. I don't use the back simply because I can get to the wiring easier and I don't have to stand on my head trying to take this panel on and off. So, like I said, we'll just clamp this in place, and then I'll use my flapper wheel, grind to it, and then I'm going to use a drum sander, something like this, to true these up. I'll make a nice little line here to bring this to, and like I say, it's still going to be all eyeball. We want to make sure the arc's the same. I'll use my socket. Here you can see this is probably 1.5 inch radius. This is 1 inch. So I'm going to need to bring this in to where it hits both edges, where it makes a nice smooth transition. I don't want it digging down, you know, or sticking out any. It's got to be nice and smooth. You want it to look factory. So let me clamp this up, see if I can find another disc. A 36 will work, especially one in this shape. It's probably pretty dull, but I still want it to come out pretty good. And then usually when I get done with that, I'll file, sand, and bring it in even closer with 220 to make sure these edges are all good, because you know, I like for this holes to be a finished product where I can just bring my glass in from the back side and I don't have to worry about recessing it in or whatnot. Alright, real quick, now that like I said, I got this all roughed out, I want to make sure that this piece is square to the outside. And I usually do that without any lines or marks. I want to really use the metal as my measuring tool. Now after I measured this side, I'm at 4 1/8 here, but over here it's a little bit even bigger than that. I'm about 4 3/16. This side is actually less than 4 1/8. So I'm going to readjust the whole thing with the grinder. Like I say, we won't worry about these till later. Nice thing about roughing a hole out, that's exactly what you're doing. So I'm going to bring this at 4 inch. Get it roughed in here. 4 inch and 4 inch. And a nice simple clamp. Let's see if we can find a good place to clamp this. Recheck it on this end. Ooh, 4 inch, perfect. I still got to be careful I don't put a mark on the back side and push this metal up. Bring this side over here. And 4 inch. Quick check, clamp it down. Obviously I had to come way in because I can't clamp out that way. Alright, now as you can see, I got just a little line to bring this to. You can see right here is real close. So this was my guide for my line. You know, obviously I can't bring it out because then this little notch is going to show. So I'll bring this down flat with a real junky 120 grit. This one's really wore out. I may end up using a 36. Bring it down and touch it up with this one. I really thought I had some new ones. If you guys ever want to get this stuff, you can buy these at Harbor Freight. I forget, you can buy them in a pack. You get 4 or 5 of these, or 3 or 4. You get a 36, a 60, a 120, and like 5 or 6 of these for 10 bucks. So it's well worth it. If you guys want to go this route, you can get these up at Harbor Freight. If you're not going to be using as much as I do, you know, they're like $20. So you really can't go wrong. You can get this stuff way cheaper, and you can pick up a Dremel or a Dremel duplicate. Seems like I paid $80 for this one, but I use these constantly. So the last one I had was a Milwaukee, and I probably had it for 10 years. And, you know, believe me, I use it a lot and finally burned it up. All right, so I'm going to get this situated and just grind this flat. I got to be careful that I don't come back too far that I can't get my arc back in here. So I'm just going to rough it into about here, straighten this line up. You'll see what I mean. I'll see if I can show it while I do it. Another thing I probably should talk about is if you were going to salvage this panel and use the existing paint, I would tape this off completely. I'd use 2-inch tape, good 2-inch masking tape so it'll come off easy, and tape this whole thing front and back. And then I would probably use duct tape around the edges, maybe 2 layers. That way if you're making your cut and make a slip, it's not one of those oh crap moments. Another thing you got to think about is most of this stuff is powder coated these days, so it's pretty durable. But when you get it hot near the edges, you really got to be concerned about this paint wanting to peel back or dislodge from the substrate. So you just have to be careful, kind of keep your eye on the temperatures while you're cutting. You may want to make a cut here, come over here, make a cut, and just work your way around it. Keep the temperature down. Obviously, be very careful both sides. If you're really going to reuse the paint, I never do, because if I'm doing a job, I know I'm going to paint it, so easy for me to fix. Let's say if you're going to use the existing job, just be very, very, very careful, because obviously it doesn't take one thing to destroy the paint. And if this was a front window, it'd just be terrible. And you're not going to match this any which way. The sheen, the texture, or anything like that with touching it up. You might get away with it on the black a little bit, maybe with a touch-up brush or a marker, but obviously that's not the look you're going to be going for. So I'm going to hit this real quick. And what I'm going to do is, this stuff's pretty thin, so when I grind, it's going to hit this piece of metal and slow me down. Now I still got to be careful that I'm not grinding a wave in here, so as soon as it hits, and you'll be able to feel it, and I'm going to back off of it. Just true it up. Alright, I had to let the camera charge up a little bit. Here I'm going to show you again. I've already done the other 3 sides. You can see here, you can see where the miscut was right here. Obviously that's going to be my guideline. And you can see how far off I am here. And it's pretty close right here. I've brought it back a little bit so I could catch this. So we'll just hit this real quick and drew this back up to the line, to this bar. Then we'll start working on these. You can see, I don't know if you can see it in this video here, but the other ones are a lot better. And I'll pan out here when I get ready to do this. I don't want the lens this close to the grinding wheel. So let me get set up here and we'll knock that one out real quick. Alright, I hope you can see this. I hope you can hear it. The camera's pretty far away. Here again, we're going to hit it, and I'm just going to go with what I can do here comfortably. There we go. Alright, you can see how quick that was. So that was with 36 grit. Knock this out of the way. Now I use my ruler just to make sure it's good and straight. Looks good. Alright, let me readjust here and show you what we got. Okay, now you can see it here. All these lines are straight and perfect with the outside edges. Our opening ended up being about 8 3/16, both ends. 13 and a half, 13 and a half. That's pretty good. Take our trusty ruler again. Just to make sure everything's nice and straight. It looks really pretty good. Pretty good. Now what I'll do is I'll redo these. I'm going to do these in pencil this time so I have something to go to. This one here is pretty close. Obviously he's got a long way to go. I actually had to move this down quite a bit, so it's really changed the arc here. So one nice thing about roughing it in, you can really, let these go to the end and then bring everything to your straight lines. You obviously want to make sure everything's square and looks good. Hopefully you can see that. Something behind it here, maybe you can see it a little better. So you see the lines, they don't look straight because of the shadows of the flange, or where the grinding marks are. We'll clean those up here in a minute. So now what we got to do is get this laid out for the radiuses. That's the most important part. Even if these are straight and these don't look right, or they're not the same or even, it's really, really going to show in the end product, especially after it's painted. So if we go back with our socket, I got a long way to go. Actually, I think I'm going to change that radius to a little bit bigger. I think it'll look better on this window. Let me see what I can find, and we'll whoop something up different. Okay, I'm going to show you another way real quick too, if you guys don't have this kind of equipment laying around or want to go get it or whatever. If you want to bring these in straight with a file, the hardest thing on sheet metal is to keep it from moving. Obviously when you're filing, it's wanting to push down the metal. And if the metal's moving, it's not cutting. Let's see if we can use, normally I would use a little piece of angle on something like this. See it better. If you have a nice piece of straight metal, a little piece of angle or something that'll support this and still give you a guide. You could use these clamps, probably C clamps would be a little bit better, but I don't have any out here right now. Just bring this up where it sticks out a little bit and then go down into the metal. That will support this panel from trying to move up. If you put this piece of metal up here, that metal's going to want to go down. So you obviously can only file in one direction anyway. So then you can just take and straighten it up like that, using your metal for a guide and a support. This is the whole way. You still want to support in here as close as you can. Keep that metal from moving, and then work your way down. And a file obviously going to give you a really, really nice finish. Take a long time, but it will work. Alright, here I've laid it out a couple places. I just made kind of some new lines here so I can get an idea where this is going to end up. Used a little bit larger socket. Sockets are great for this because, change any size you want. You can see here, I just want to make sure that this radius is going to cover up any flaws. I'm not going to have enough material to remove. So now I'm going to start cutting these back and finishing these out, and then we'll just finish the whole thing off. Something like this really, from start to finish, should only take half hour, 45 minutes. Probably seems like a long time in the video going back and forth. But once you get on it, get used to the equipment, the tools, and how it works, it goes pretty quick. Let me lay this out. Let me see how I'm going to clamp this up and work on these. In fact, I'll probably take these in and use. I usually do these on the drill press instead of trying to do it out here. I'll probably use that way. I can use two hands. Yeah, so I think I'll do that. We'll go set up in the other shop and we'll go from there. All right, we'll see if we can see this or not. The sound's probably going to be a little bit different. You can see here I've hogged it out a little bit more here, here, and here. And I've actually already started on this one. You probably can't see it in the video, but I got a new line here. You can see here where it tapers out and tapers here. So I'm going to have to bring these in straight and get to this line. I'm just going to use a little drum sander. It's the best one I have. So I'm only going to do one corner so you guys can get an idea. I like to hold it like this a little more because it gets more surface area and tries not to cut them grooves out, makes it useless. Let me show you how I handle this. Actually, I think that's pretty good. Let's see if you can see it. Radius not too bad. It needs more, but my drums are just done. You can see there, it fits pretty good. It's a little bit straighter right here. Right here. You file that in. See where we're at. Alright, that just about wraps this up. I only did one corner because my discs are all burned up and I need to get some new ones. As you can see, these are still really rough. Here, here, and here. You know, wouldn't take long to finish them out. You can see this one here I've got done. Got a pretty good radius on it. Blends in real nice. Cuts are real straight. Let's see if I can let you guys see down this. Hopefully you can see in the video just how straight that is. And this one here. Let's see if we can get a little backlighting on it there. So that's the main thing what I was talking about is just, you know, it's got, you know what, these have been sanded. No more sharp edges. Good radius. This could actually be a little bit better. If I had a little bit more disc, I'd take more out right there. But obviously, if I was doing this for somebody or myself, these would be perfect. Kind of give you an idea what it looks like to make a nice straight cut and how much better that's going to look with glass in it. Whole lot better. As you can see, I hit it real quick with some paint. Sand scratches are showing. I used some 80 grit on it just to knock down them rough edges real quick. Obviously, I'm not going to use this for anything. So I guess that's what it's all about. You guys take your time, make some nice edges, and should be a good deal. Not too shabby. See more builds, check us out. I'm Fanblade over at CaseModContest.com. Get over there, post your build. We run a contest every month. We're going to run a 1-year contest and People Choice Award contest, and we'll probably throw in quite a few more as time goes on. We're a pretty new site, so definitely want to build things up. But just to give you an idea of how I do it, how I straighten these cuts up. Not sure right or wrong, but as you can see, nice and smooth. We roughed it in, chomped it out real quick, and then brought everything back into it. Alright guys, don't forget to check us out over at CaseModContest.com. CMC for short. I'm Fanblade, and that ought to do it for today. Thanks for watching, guys.